Roger, roger.
It's unfair.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Hey guys, what is going on today? So you know that new feature on Instagram that lets me ask you to ask me any questions? Well, long story short, I used it and got thousands of you guys asking your questions in just a few minutes. I'm thinking about going over them all in live streams, which could be fun. Now, many of the questions revolved around my thoughts for episode 9. While I could just do a fanfiction in the future, this video will go over the things that I'd like to see in the movie at the very beginning. Alright. So, The Last Jedi ended with Rey and Kylo, where she closes the door to their bridged minds. Where does this leave 9? What I'd like to happen is for us to start 9 with a very mysterious world, full of color and spectrums, almost like in a dream. Extremely vivid, but unimaginably beautiful with nature of all kinds. I want the first shot to be Obi-Wan as a ghost, but his back is to us as he's wearing his robes. He's speaking, but it's very quiet and mumbled. We really can't make out anything that he's saying. Kind of like in war movies when a mortar is hit and you can't really hear all that well. It's kind of ringing and muffled, but gradually over time it gets a bit better. In the distance, you see something small moving. It's super blurry and tiny, but it's there, and you kind of have an idea of who it could be. For now, the angle is like someone is wearing a GoPro. It's point of view style. So imagine it with me. You're sitting in the theater, the screen is showing someone walking up to Obi-Wan, as we know, with his back towards us, kind of on a ledge. He moves his hands a bit. He speaks, but we can only pick up a few words here and there. Then we see whose point of view it was. It's Luke. He's walking in this white space, but he's still old, like he was in The Last Jedi. Why is that? Usually when you're a Force ghost, you go to the image of yourself that you see the most in your mind. He's crystal clear, but the area around him is somewhat blurred. Now, I want to give the effect like it's the afterlife, almost like this is where Force ghosts go when they transcend into the Force itself. Luke's starting to shout, but we can't hear him at all. The whole theater is literally dead quiet, like you can hear a pin drop at this point, until finally we hear him shout, "Ben! Where am I?" This is when a familiar voice off screen, that we don't see as we're still on Luke's face, says, "You're home, son." As the camera pans slowly, it goes to Anakin as a Force ghost in this weird afterlife world. He walks to Luke face to face, and we see it crystal clear on screen, the two of them together for the first time. This is where Luke begins to tear up. Now, if you remember on screen, the last time we saw Luke interact with young Anakin was in Return of the Jedi. Obviously in the new remastered edition, but still we can say that Luke has seen this version of Anakin. They don't say anything to each other, they just look at each other emotionally. Come with us, this is just the beginning. Stretching out his hand, Luke grabs it and we immediately go to Rey, who's training hard. She's on some planet in a jungle doing flips and sprints, climbing trees, almost like a callback to Luke on Dagobah training, however, different. This jungle is extremely exotic. It's not so much of a swamp-like one like Dagobah. This one's lit up with lots of sunlight, but still somewhat shadowed from the density of trees and leaves that tower over her. She gets a call, she answers it, and it's Poe. He's telling her to go just a little further. She's on the planet that he grew up on, where Luke donated a Force-sensitive tree he stole back from the Empire and gave it to Poe's parents. Now, this actually happened in the comics. Poe grew up playing on this tree, where he knew Rey, who would sleep on it all the time, whenever she would visit. She moves through shrubs and bushes, coming to a cliff with an extremely beautiful opening, something like from The Land Before Time or Jurassic Park or something like that. Really scenic, and below it, we see a town with homes, and one of the homes has a massive forest tree. She starts to get flashbacks, subtle ones of her childhood, but the real, and she begins to piece things together from her past. Next, we switch to Kylo Ren. He's off at Vader's castle on Mustafar, and if you've seen any of my fanfictions about The Last Jedi, you can imagine it's something like that. Now here he's looking for Vader's lightsaber and his crystal, but to do so, he has to find a way in, and as he does, he hears different whispers and voices, kind of like Rey did in The Last Jedi with the Force tree. However, this time, he hears it on Mustafar, and he turns around when he's hearing Anakin's voice. But it's not Anakin speaking to him, it's just the battle that Anakin and Obi-Wan had on that planet. Kylo is very in tune with his grandfather as the bloodline runs through him, so he walks to the spot where Anakin lost to Obi-Wan and burned alive. We get some sounds of the battle echoing through the scene as Kylo closes his eyes and begins to get flashes of what has happened. Breaking his concentration and the visions and the voices, he sees Snoke's shuttle arrive from above, giving another callback to when Palpatine arrived for Vader in distress. As his shuttle lands, the doors open, and we have Kylo closest to the camera as Snoke walks down far into the distance, motioning for him to come with one hand. Walking away from us, Kylo goes towards Snoke. Now this of course is going to confuse the audience. They're all going to be like, well, didn't Snoke die? I don't really understand. That's going to be explained later on, and if you've seen my fanfictions then you can kind of understand. But basically I'm going to say that that whole scene was just planned by Snoke and Kylo themselves. It was to get Rey to join Kylo. That entire thing was Snoke's plan, and through that, they would have been able to control Rey and take her. When the end of the first act is pretty much complete, mind you, this all takes about 20 minutes, but it hits you hard, it gets in your feels, and gets you caught up with what everyone's doing. The next scene, I imagine, would be Luke and the Force ghosts speaking, but he can't see them. They're now teaching him to use the Force in ways that he's never done before. He is somewhere he has never been, and it's not in that same place that we saw him in the first scene. This is where we hear a mix of so many different voices, somewhat like we do in Rebels when Ezra went into the place in between time itself. You hear Vader, you hear Vader's breathing, you hear the nose scream from Luke, you hear Anakin saying, "I hate you," you hear Leia, you hear Padme, Palpatine, Kylo, everything and everyone, but all mixed up and not in any order at all. Then, you see Yoda standing far into the distance.
Come, Skywalker, much to learn, you still have.
And then, we go on with Luke's training, where he learns how to manifest himself on planets just like he did with the Force at the end of The Last Jedi. Now that power, albeit not what many of us wanted, is cool in the sense that it opens the doorway to Luke being able to appear as real as he can anywhere that he wants. Now, the next step is to learn to interact with the real world like Yoda did, and boom, basically Luke is alive. Now, also in Episode 9, I would like to see someone more powerful than Kylo and Rey. So it would be really cool if Ezra came back from the unknown regions. That'd be really sweet to see. So that's just one version of how I would want Episode 9 to go. There are tons of different ones. Of course, there's a funny one that a lot of people like to say, which is basically Luke waking up from a bad dream. Now that could happen as well. I don't know. There's tons of things. JJ could literally do anything, as it is all up to him now. So if you enjoyed this version, let me know. If you have your own version, write your own version down below, and let's see what everyone else says about it. Thanks for watching this episode, everyone. Let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next episode of Star Wars Theory. Until then, my fellow Jedi and Sith friends, remember,
The Force will be with you always.
Now, fulfill your destiny.